When I arrived at my house for Thanksgiving, the party was already over. Mom said, "Perfect timing, clean this up." I told them to get out. But my sister laughed. "You let us use the house, we're staying." So I taught them a lesson. I'm Penelope Mitchell, and I'm 26 now. Growing up, I had parents, obviously, Jennifer and Robert Mitchell. And I had an older sister, Olivia, who's 4 years older than me. She's 30 now, married to some guy named Derek, and they've got twin boys who just turned 4. But here's the thing about my childhood that really screwed with my head for years. From the moment I could understand words, I was compared to Olivia. Every single day. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When she brought home straight A's in 5th grade, my parents threw her pizza party and bought her a new bike. When I brought home straight A's 2 years later, my mom just said it was expected, and that Olivia had done it first anyway. I remember when I was 8 and Olivia was 12. We both played soccer. She scored 3 goals in one game, and my dad wouldn't shut up about it for weeks. He told everyone at his office, all our relatives, even the neighbors. When I scored 4 goals in my game the next month, he just nodded and said that was nice. At home, it was even worse. Every decision, every family discussion, Olivia's opinion was what mattered. When I was 13, I really wanted to paint my bedroom this light blue color. I'd been saving up my allowance to buy the paint myself. But Olivia said it would look ugly and clash with the hallway, and my parents immediately shut down the idea. Meanwhile, when Olivia wanted to knock down a wall in her room to make it bigger, when she was 16, they hired contractors and did it without question. The time we were picking a vacation spot, I'd been begging to go to this science museum in Boston for months, because my class was studying astronomy and I was obsessed with it. But Olivia wanted to go to some beach resort in Florida. Guess where we went? Yeah, Florida. I didn't even get to bring a book about space because my mom said it would be too heavy in the luggage. Family dinners were the worst. I'd try to talk about something that happened at school or something I was interested in, and my parents would listen for maybe 30 seconds before turning to Olivia and asking about her day. It was like I was just background noise in my own family. The only place I felt like I actually mattered was at my grandparents' house. Grandma Margaret and Grandpa William lived about 40 minutes away in this beautiful house right on the lake. Honestly, that place was more home to me than my actual home ever was. Every weekend I begged my parents to let me stay with them. Sometimes they'd say yes just to get me out of their hair. At Grandma and Grandpa's, everything was different. They actually listened when I taught. I could go on and on about whatever I was into at the moment, whether it was dinosaurs, or poetry, or learning to skateboard, and they'd sit there genuinely interested. Grandpa would hang up my drawings on the wall in his study, not just stick them on the fridge with a magnet where they'd fall off in a week, but actually frame some of them and put them up like real art. He told me once that my drawing of a sunset over the lake was his favorite piece in the whole house. I was 11 when he said that, and I swear I almost cried. Grandma would make tea and bake these amazing chocolate chip cookies from scratch. We'd sit at the kitchen table, just the two of us sometimes, and she'd ask me about my friends, my classes, what I wanted to be when I grew up. She never once compared me to Olivia. Never once said I should be more like her. At their house I was just Penelope, and that was enough. When I graduated high school, I wanted to go to university. I'd worked hard, gotten good grades despite the lack of encouragement at home. And I'd been accepted to a decent school with a program I was excited about. But when I told my parents I needed help with tuition, they sat me down and said no. They said they couldn't afford it. They needed the money for Olivia's wedding. She'd gotten engaged to Derek, and my parents were planning this massive event. My mom had spreadsheets and binders full of ideas. They booked this expensive hotel downtown, hired a fancy caterer, and my mom was having a custom dress made for Olivia that cost more than a semester of my tuition. I asked if maybe they could help with just a little bit, enough to cover my books at least. My dad said I needed to learn to be independent and that Olivia's wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. I didn't bother pointing out that my education was also pretty important. So I took out student loans, big ones, the kind that would follow me around for years. I signed all the papers myself, moved into a tiny dorm room, and started classes, while working part-time at a coffee shop to cover my living expenses. The wedding was insane. I'm talking ice sculptures, a 7-tier cake, a live band, flowers everywhere. There were like 200 guests. Olivia looked beautiful, I'll give her that. The custom dress was gorgeous. My parents looked so proud walking her down the aisle. During the reception, while everyone was eating overpriced steak and drinking champagne, Grandma and Grandpa found me sitting alone at a table in the corner. I'd been watching everyone celebrate and trying not to think about my student loan debt. Grandpa pulled up a chair next to me and asked how school was going. I told him it was good, that my classes were interesting, that I was managing okay. He looked at me with these kind eyes and said if things ever got difficult, if I ever needed help, I could come to them. He said they'd always support me. Grandma squeezed my hand and nodded. She said they were proud of me for working so hard, and that they knew I was going to do great things. I felt this huge weight lift off my chest. Just knowing someone believed in me, someone had my back, it made everything feel possible. I thanked them, probably more emotionally than I should have at a wedding reception, and they just smiled. I made it through my second year okay. The loans were piling up, but I was managing. I'd started to figure out who I was outside of my family's shadow. I had friends, professors who actually noticed my work, a future that felt like mine. Then the summer before my third year hit, and everything fell apart. Grandpa William died of a massive heart attack in July. Just like that. One day he was fine, working in his garden by the lake, and the next day he was gone. I got the call from my mom while I was at my summer job. "Penelope, your grandfather passed away this morning," she said, her voice flat. "The funeral is Saturday." She sounded annoyed that she had to tell me like it was an inconvenience. The funeral was small. I cried through the whole thing. My parents stood there looking uncomfortable, and Olivia kept checking her phone because the twins were with a babysitter. I wanted to scream at all of them that we'd just lost someone incredible, but I kept my mouth shut. Grandma Margaret took it hard, really hard. She'd been with Grandpa for almost 50 years. After the funeral, I visited her at the lake house as much as I could, but she seemed like a shell of herself. She barely ate, barely taught. It was like part of her had died too. A month later, I got another call. Grandma had passed away in her sleep. The doctor said it was heart failure, but I knew the truth. She died because she couldn't stand being without him. Some people are like that, so connected that when one goes, the other just follows. I was devastated. In the span of 5 weeks, I'd lost the only 2 people who'd ever really seen me. The only 2 people who'd made me feel like I mattered. I spent days just crying in my dorm room, barely able to function. A week after Grandma's funeral, my mom called and told me we had to meet at a lawyer's office. Some guy named Mr. Johnson who'd handled my grandparents' affairs. She said it was for the reading of the will, and that I needed to be there. I showed up at this office downtown on a Wednesday afternoon. The waiting room had these leather chairs and old law books on shelves. My parents were already there, sitting stiff and formal. Olivia was next to them, looking bored. Mr. Johnson was this older man with gray hair and a calm voice. He invited us into his office and had us sit down. Then he opened a folder and started reading. "Your grandparents have left their house at 2847 Lakeview Road to Penelope Mitchell," he said, along with $150,000 in cash. The room went dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then Olivia made this sharp inhaling sound like she'd been punched. My mom grabbed my dad's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. I sat there in shock. I hadn't expected anything, honestly. I just wanted them back. Mr. Johnson kept reading. "There is a personal message from William to Jennifer Mitchell," he said, then read it out loud. "We do not leave you or Olivia anything, as we already gave you $200,000 when you reported financial difficulties in preparing for Olivia's wedding. $200,000. I felt like I'd been slapped. My parents had told me they couldn't afford to help with my education. They'd said they had no money. But they'd gotten $200,000 for my grandparents, and spent it all on Olivia's wedding. That hotel, that dress, that ridiculous ice sculpture, it all made sense now." My mom jumped up from her chair. Her face went bright red, and she slammed her hand down on Mr. Johnson's desk so hard I thought she'd hurt herself. "I can't accept this," she said loudly. "This isn't fair. You can't just single out Penelope like this." Mr. Johnson didn't even flinch. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is an official will, properly executed. The wishes of the deceased must be respected." But they must have been confused, my dad tried to argue. There is nothing to contest here, Mr. Johnson said firmly. Everything is legal and final. My parents looked furious. Olivia looked like she wanted to cry, and I just sat there, numb, trying to process everything. We left the office, and I thought that was it. I was heading to my car when my parents caught up with me in the parking lot. "Penelope, wait," my mom called out in this sweet, syrupy voice I'd literally never heard her use before. "Can we talk for a minute?" I should have said no, but some stupid part of me thought maybe they wanted to actually have a real conversation for once. So, I agreed. We walked to a cafe next door. It was one of those places with small tables and overpriced coffee. We sat down and my mom didn't waste any time. She immediately started talking about the house. "I know a realtor, someone very good," she said. "She could sell the lake house for a great price. The market is hot right now. You could make a lot of money." My dad jumped in. "Maintaining a house is expensive, Penelope. Property taxes, repairs, upkeep. It's too much for a young girl to handle, especially a student." Olivia nodded enthusiastically. "You're not going to live that far from the city anyway. It would be smarter to sell and use the money somewhere more convenient." Then my mom reached across the table and took my hand. She leaned in close and whispered, "We're family, sweetheart. Family helps each other. Selling the house would be the responsible thing to do." I looked at her hand on mine. I thought about all the time she'd ignored me, dismissed me, chose Olivia over me. I thought about the $200,000 they'd hidden from me. I thought about my grandparents and how that house was the only place I'd ever felt loved. I pulled my hand away. "I have no intention of selling the house," I said clearly and firmly. "I want to keep what my grandparents left me. It means something to me." My mom's face changed instantly. The sweetness disappeared. "You're being selfish and foolish," my dad started arguing. "This is completely unreasonable," Olivia added. I stood up, left money for my coffee on the table, and walked out. They called after me, but I didn't turn around. 2 years passed after that disaster at the cafe. I focused on myself for the first time in my life. The money my grandparents left me, I didn't blow it on stupid stuff. I opened an investment account and put most of it there. I used some to pay for the upkeep of the lake house, property taxes, and basic maintenance. For myself, I only bought what I actually needed. I finished my last 2 years of university and graduated with decent grades. Then I landed a job at this marketing company I'd been dreaming about working for since my junior year. It wasn't some huge corporation, but it was respected in the industry and the work was interesting. I was proud of myself. I rented a small apartment in the city. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with enough space for me and my stuff. It was mine, and that's what mattered. The lake house, I didn't let it sit empty. I had a friend who worked as a realtor, and she helped me rent it out to people who wanted a vacation spot by the lake. Families mostly, sometimes couples looking for a quiet weekend. The rental income helped cover the costs, and then some. As for my parents and Olivia, I barely spoke to them. We'd go months without any contact. They'd call sometimes, usually around holidays, and I'd give short answers and get off the phone as fast as I could. It was better that way. Then one day my mom called and said she wanted me to come to dinner on Friday. She sounded normal, not sweet or fake, just regular. I almost said no, but something made me agree. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was just tired of avoiding them forever. When I pulled up to my parents' house that Friday evening, I noticed right away that something was off. The house looked bad. The paint was peeling on the shutters, the gutters were hanging at weird angles, and the lawn that my dad used to obsess over was completely overgrown with dandelions and weeds. It looked neglected. Inside wasn't much better. The furniture looked worn out, and there were water stains on the ceiling in the hallway. But dinner was ready, and we all sat down at the table like a normal family. At first, the conversation was almost pleasant. My parents asked about my job in Chicago, about my apartment, about how I spent my weekends. Olivia asked if I was dating anyone. It felt weirdly normal, and I started to relax a little. Then dessert came out. My mom had made apple pie. We were eating it when my dad cleared his throat. "So, Thanksgiving is coming up," he said casually. "We're expecting a lot of relatives this year. Uncle Tom, Aunt Sarah, the cousins. It's going to be a full house. That's nice, I said, not really paying attention. The thing is, he continued, we'd like to rent a more spacious place for everyone. Somewhere with room for the kids to run around. But we haven't been able to find anything suitable. I felt it coming before my mom even opened her mouth. We were wondering, she said carefully, if maybe you could lend us the house she inherited. Just for Thanksgiving weekend. Olivia jumped in immediately. It would be perfect, Penelope. The twins could play by the lake. They'd love it. Fresh air, nature, all that. I thought about my grandparents. I thought about how they'd always loved having family around for holidays. They'd probably want the house to be used for something like this. They'd want their great-grandchildren to play there. Okay, I said. You can use it for Thanksgiving. My mom smiled. Thank you, sweetheart. That's very generous. We set a time for Thanksgiving Day. They'd arrive at 2 in the afternoon and I'd meet them there. We'd all celebrate together as a family. Thanksgiving came, and I decided to head to the lake house a little early. I wanted to make sure everything was ready, maybe put out some decorations. I got there around 1:30, but when I unlocked the front door and walked in, I knew immediately that something was wrong. The party was already over, or at least, the meal part was. There were dirty dishes everywhere. Plates piled in the sink. Glasses on every surface. Food stains on the tablecloth. My wooden dining table had cigarette burns on it, actual burns that had ruined the finish. And my grandmother's expensive carpet, the one she brought back from a trip to Turkey, had these dark stains all over it that looked like wine or maybe gravy. I walked through the house in shock. The relatives were gone. It was just my parents and Olivia somewhere in the back. I could hear them laughing. The sound came from the living room at the rear of the house. I walked quietly toward the sound and stopped in the doorway where they couldn't see me. My parents were on the couch. Olivia was in the armchair. They all had drinks in their hands and looked completely relaxed. It's a good thing Penelope wasn't here, my mom said, laughing. She's not needed here anyway. This is my parents' house, really. But at least she can play hostess now and clean up all this mess herself. My dad laughed along with her. The girl needs to learn some humility. And now that she's let us use the house, we might as well keep coming here. She gave us permission after all. They clinked their glasses together like they just made some brilliant plan. I felt rage build up inside me. Pure, hot anger. I'd offered them the house because I wanted to help, because I thought it was what my grandparents would have wanted. And they'd used me. They deliberately lied about the time so I wouldn't be at Thanksgiving. They'd trashed the place and were planning to keep using it without asking. I stepped into the room. They jumped when they saw me. My mom's glass actually slipped in her hand, but she caught it. Penelope, my dad said with fake enthusiasm, we were just waiting for you. You must have gotten the time wrong. I heard everything, I said. My voice was shaking. You gave me the wrong time on purpose so you could celebrate without me. My mom let out this theatrical groan. Oh, Penelope, you're always so dramatic about everything. Get out, I said. Get out of my house. Now wait a minute, my mom said, standing up. We're family. We have a right to use this house. You gave us permission. I said, get out. This is my property, and I want you gone. My dad laughed, actually laughed. This is our family home, Penelope. We're staying. And you can start cleaning up the kitchen. I didn't say anything else. I turned around and walked straight out the front door, slamming it behind me so hard the windows rattled. The next morning I called Mr. Johnson. He'd been helping my grandparents for years and I trusted him. I told him everything that happened at Thanksgiving. Even if they're your parents, he said firmly, your property rights need to be protected. We'll take legal action. Getting ready for court took time. We had to gather all the documents, the deed to the house, records of every interaction I'd had with my parents about the property. We needed proof of the damage they'd caused. Mr. Johnson was thorough and patient through the whole process. The trial day finally came. I sat in the courtroom feeling nervous but ready. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke calmly and clearly. I stated the facts without getting emotional. I gave my parents permission to use the house for Thanksgiving Day only, I said. I have messages in our family chat that prove this. I never gave them permission to live there. The judge looked at the evidence Mr. Johnson presented. Screenshots of the messages, photos of the damaged table and carpet, everything. My mother took the stand next. She had tears running down her face, but they looked fake to me. "This house should belong to the whole family," she said, her voice breaking. "Penelope got it unfairly. It's not right that only she inherited it." The judge held up the will. "Mrs. Mitchell, the will is clear and legal." My mom's tears disappeared fast. "She influenced them," she said angrily. "She manipulated my parents into writing the will in her favor." The judge's expression hardened. "Do you have any proof of this claim, Mrs. Mitchell?" "Well, no, but—" "Then you are slandering your daughter without evidence," the judge said sharply. "I will not tolerate baseless accusations in my courtroom." I also presented evidence of the damage from their party. Photos of the cigarette-burned table, the ruined carpet, received showing what it would cost to replace them. And I showed documents proving I'd lost rental income for several months. Because my parents refused to leave and I couldn't rent the house out. A few weeks later, the verdict came. The court ruled in my favor completely. My parents were ordered to vacate the property immediately and pay compensation for all the damage they'd caused, plus my lost rental income. After the verdict was announced, my parents and Olivia started messaging me constantly. Apologies, begging, asking me to meet and talk. I deleted every message without reading most of them. Then one evening, I came home from work and found my mother standing outside my apartment door. She looked terrible, exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. "Please," she said when she saw me, "just listen to me for a minute." "What do you want?" I asked, not moving closer. "We're sorry," she said. Her voice cracked. "We're so sorry for all the pain we caused you. Please forgive us. We're family." I shook my head slowly. "I can't forgive you. I suffered in that family my whole childhood. I'm tired of being considered family only when it's convenient for you." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Real ones this time. Your father's company went bankrupt," she said quietly. "He's buried in debt. We need help, Penelope. Please." I took a deep breath and looked at her directly. "I can't help you. And I don't consider you my family anymore." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then slowly, she lowered her head and walked away without another word. I went inside my apartment and immediately called Mr. Johnson. I told him about my mother showing up. "You should apply for a restraining order," he advised, "to protect your peace of mind." I filed for it the next day. When the restraining order was approved, the court sent official documents to my parents by mail. They were shocked, apparently, and they told every relative they could about what I'd done, trying to make me look like the villain. But I heard from some of those relatives what was really happening to my family. My dad couldn't find a job after his company went under. He spent all his time trying to pay off debts. His arrogant personality had ruined most of his friendships, and he'd pushed away almost everyone who might have helped him. My mom was mentally falling apart, stressed about my dad's situation. She'd stopped taking care of herself. Olivia and her husband were struggling too. Raising twins was expensive, and their relationship was strained. Money was tight. She worked constantly to cover the kids' school costs and daily expenses. She'd always relied on our parents for help, and now without them, she was drowning. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. After cutting off contact with my family completely, I threw myself into my work. Each successful project made me more confident. I could feel myself growing, becoming the person I was supposed to be all along. After work, I'd go to cafes in the city and meet new people. I made actual friends, people who liked me for who I was. People who didn't compare me to anyone, or expect me to be someone else. On weekends, I drove out to the lake house. I'd sit on the porch and watch the water or walk along the shore. Sometimes I'd go inside and look at the drawings Grandpa had framed, still hanging on the wall. I'd think about Grandma's cookies and the way they'd both listen to me like I mattered. I felt grateful. Grateful they'd seen something in me worth protecting. Grateful they'd given me a way out. Grateful they'd loved me when nobody else did. The house wasn't just property to me. It was proof that someone had cared, that someone had thought I deserved good things. And now, finally, I was living the life they'd wanted for me. I was happy, actually happy. And I'd done it all on my own terms.